Welcome to Nitty Gritty Real Estate. In this series, we're interviewing Matthew Cox. He's infamous for committing millions of dollars in mortgage fraud, for which he served 12 years in prison. He has an ugly past, no doubt, but we're looking beyond that to learn from his unique perspective in the industry so that we can become better real estate investors. Let's get into it.
A real estate shotgunning scam. Basically, it's when you borrow multiple loans or mortgages on a piece of property so quickly that the lenders cannot figure out that the other loans exist. And specifically, this is something that I did for years. I actually had one piece of property that I purchased for $80,000 that I borrowed right at $1 million on from multiple, I think it was 6 or 8 different loans. No, was it maybe? I think it was 6 different loans. So I've also bought a piece of property one time. Anyway, the point is this. The point is you could do this as individuals do this sometimes. And I actually know a guy one time that he had a piece of property. He owed like $80,000 on it, but the house was worth about $150,000. And he was going to start flipping properties. And what he did was he went out and got 2 different HELOCs, home equity lines of credit. So he went one to SunTrust, and then he went to, I don't know if it was Bank of America, I forget. But he closed both of them on the same day, and they both lent him money. And the way this is done is that both lenders had done a title search and saw that there was only one currently existing mortgage on the property. And because they were lending basically a second mortgage or a second loan in the form of a HELOC on top of the first loan, they were okay with that. They didn't realize that he had gone to 2 separate banks and borrowed at the same time. And because once the documents are signed, the title company then mails in the documents and they're recorded, it worked. Because public records, even if the clerk at public records were to actually get the loan paperwork and get the same loan paperwork at the same time and have both of them in front of her, she wouldn't know that it was a scam. She would just record it.
So to clarify, you're saying, okay, with the HELOC thing, he got 2 at the same time, and each one thinks that they're the second, but each one is actually the first?
No. They both think they're the only person lending a HELOC on that property. They don't know that there's... Look, what they're doing is something called... there's loan to value. Right, so his first mortgage, if his property is worth $150,000 and the first mortgage is $80,000, right? So his LTV at that time is roughly 55%, right? About 55, a little over 50%.
Yeah.
So they're willing to do a 100% cumulative loan to value. They'll lend him the difference between the $80,000 and the $150,000 that the house is worth. They're willing to lend him $70,000. Well, $70,000 wasn't enough for him. So he said, I'm going to get $70,000 from SunTrust and I'm going to go to Bank of America and get $70,000 from them. And because neither one of them realize that one of the 2 of them is going to be stacked on top of the other, and therefore it won't be a CLTV of 100%, it'll be a CLTV of 150%. So they don't know about the other person doesn't know about the other loan. It's basically, it's like me going and borrowing $10 from you, $10 from you, $10 from you, $10 from you, $10 from everybody to get $100.
Quickly, back to back. Yeah.
You figure, well, Matt will pay me back $10. But the truth is, if you knew, but he borrowed $10 from everybody. Well, now there's less likelihood that I'm going to pay you back $10, right?
So let's say you bought a piece of property, or you're getting a loan on a piece of property, and you're taking loans out on from 5 banks. Is that 5 appraisals?
Yeah, 5 appraisals. Like for me, I would go buy a piece of property where I owned it, let's say 100%. I end up owning a $200,000 piece of property for 100%. I own it. There's no first mortgage. And what I would do is then I'd turn around and I'd go to 5 different banks, and each bank would say, okay, well, where do you want to, you were refinancing it, or a bank or a lender, and they would say, well, where do you want to close it? Well, I'd say, oh, I want to close it at Old Republic Title. And then with Bank of America. And then with Capital One Lending, I would say, I want to close it with Lawyer's Title. And then with Rockfield Lending, I would say, I want to close this one with, ABC Lending or title company. And that way, each one of them orders title and each one of them gets a title policy. I can't take every bank to the same title company because they'd say, you're the fifth bank that's asked us to pull title. And they would go, well, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, SunTrust and Bank of America and First Tennessee. And they go, you get a diligent, hardworking loan officer. He may pick up the phone and make a call and say, what do you mean he just applied 2 hours ago? He applied with us an hour ago, or 3 hours ago. So the point is that once all those titles provide the clear title, I'm providing my documents to each and every one of those banks. So then I schedule the closings within a couple of days of each other. I've had them where I've closed 2 weeks apart because most public records are really, some of them are fairly up to date, but you still have to take into account the human factor. If I close on Monday, is the title company going to process all that paperwork and mail off the documents on Monday? So even if they did it on Wednesday, the mail's a few days. It takes another couple of days for public records to get the document and actually scan the document. So even if they mail it off on Wednesday and they get it on Monday and they scan it on Monday, I still have a week. But the truth is, most of the time, they just pile up. At one point in Atlanta, they were 4 months behind. They had the documents. They just don't have the staff to process it fast enough. Now, in Tampa, at one point, Tampa was about 2-3 weeks behind. You would mail them something and it'd be about 2-3 weeks before it showed up in public records. Every county is different.
So what happens at the county office if the recorder just happens to get 5 copies of the documents for the same house at the same time?
She would just record it. Keep in mind, it's a recording system. It's public records. They just record. She doesn't realize, first of all, it's not illegal for me to have 4 loans on a property. She doesn't know that that property is not worth $500,000 and doesn't cover all that. She doesn't know. She's not an underwriter. She is not a loan officer. She is not a trained person in finance. She does not know. She is a public servant making $15 an hour that just wants to be able to work 20 years and get a retirement. That's all she is. She is someone that knows, I record this document and attach it to the title on this property. All she knows. Besides that, they get thousands every single day. The likelihood she would get my 5 in a row and put it all together, that's not something that doesn't even factor into the equation. The point is I would then go and I would get all 5 loans, close all 5 of them, deposit the checks into 4 or 5 different accounts, pull out the money, and just leave. So that's a shotgunning scam, is where you're borrowing multiple mortgages on the same piece of property so quickly that no one lender figures it out until, of course, it's too late. And that's a shotgunning scam.